All right, welcome back everyone. Episode 11 of Ask the Collective. My name is Rich Brubaker. I'm the founder of Collective Responsibility. It's great to have you back. We had a bit of a small break. We haven't been consistent as YouTube told us to do, but we're back. And that's all that matters. Okay, so beautiful day, and we're here to talk about one question from an old friend about what's the role of SMEs in sustainability, but more specific, what's the opportunity for SMEs in China to be involved with the closed loop economy? It's a great question. I hope that you enjoy the answer. And if you do, please remember to like, share, and comment. So without further ado, here's our question.
Is it possible for SMEs to adopt or drive circular economy principles? And how is the situation with SMEs and circular economy adoption in China? Thank you in advance.
Dima, thank you very much for your question. It's a very timely question because actually we have been spending the last few months looking at the waste streams of Shanghai purely for our own purposes to figure out where things go. But then we've also had several clients who are actually trying to close the loop. And so I'm going to give you a few lessons about what we learned from the informal system, and I'm going to tell you a few things that we learned from our client work. First off, the informal system is what gives me hope that closed loop economies can work. And we have followed everything from plastic to aluminum, cardboard, wood, and now we're following food and electronics. And we have a few other things that we've run into along the way, like styrofoam that we've kind of at the superficial level learned about, but we haven't spent deep study. And what I've come away with that's very encouraging that I think feeds into this question is a few things. First off, there is an economy for waste in China that does not exist anywhere else. If I'm in Western countries, be it Western Europe or the United States, Canada, their governments are subsidizing the recycling systems at the city and state level in a way that most would say the market just proves that there's no market for these wastes. In China, though, that is the exact opposite. The cities here have put almost virtually nothing into the system. Okay, they've got a couple double-sided bins, but the reality is there's only one truck. And they're not subsidizing, they're not promoting, they're not creating any infrastructure for recycling to happen. And they're certainly not making the economics of recycling viable. But Shanghai has one of the highest rates of recycling that we have seen in many of the cities and countries that we have been looking at as part of this study. And the reason is very simple. The economy for materials is so hot right now that everything that you consider a waste as a consumer or even at the industrial level is often seen as a resource for somebody else. So in short, waste is valuable in China. And that's a big stepping block. That's a big foundational stone that I think will offer the foundation for your question to be really answered at the tactical level. The second thing is that economy has created infrastructure and the number of tens of thousands of recyclers, dozens of consolidation points, and hundreds if not thousands of factories that are all involved in basically sorting, consolidating, and reusing these materials. In the case of cardboard alone, and we followed a number of cardboard shipments that were kind of flowing through the system, we had several shipments that within 24 hours, this cardboard was at a pulp and paper factory. And based on conversations we had with different stakeholders, we realized that within about 3 days of you throwing your electronic commerce box out the window, it was a new box for somebody else. It was quite a closed loop. Now, obviously, you need to bring in some virgin materials. You need to add energy. You need to add water. You need to add chemicals. So there's still some input coming in. It's not a completely closed loop. But on the materials basis, you have a significant reduction of virgin material requirements. And that's a great step. The other thing that we're learning is that basically the challenge that cities face, which is an opportunity for business, is how to formalize the closure of these loops. Sadly, these informal loops tend to be quite dirty. They tend to be quite optically dirty even in the local environment. No one wants to see these recyclers walking or cycling down their streets. No one wants to see these mountains of paper, plastic, whatever it may be, down the street from their apartment. They view it as unsafe. They view it as hurting their real estate prices, whatever. So the cities are now in a position where they have to formalize this process. But if I look at the organizations that are already doing it, not the informal ones and not the formal government structure, if I look in between in business, this is where things actually were quite illuminating for us. We would be at a construction site and they would open up a recycling center on the construction site. So from a pure materials standpoint, that was really interesting. From a mixed materials standpoint, if you go to any residential compound in Shanghai, and obviously I believe this is true in Beijing and Guangzhou and Chengdu and some other cities that we visited, if you have 5, 10, 15 apartment buildings in a single compound, there is a sorting center in the basement of that compound, probably in the parking lot. An entrepreneur, an individual, maybe a family, maybe a small group of friends, have rented that space. They have created their own business inside that parking space. They're paying the management fee, they're paying the management company for that rental, and they're selling that stuff off. Now, we've had discussions with small developers and large developers about how they could formalize that on their own because they realize that there's a profit margin to be made here. But more than anything, they learn that they can save money by sending more waste out into the streams, but also that there's just a better way of doing things so that they can participate in that. So again, you're starting to see some angles from business and how they can do that. If I scale it up into our current clients that we're looking at, we have one major retailer, a branded retailer, and the other one is a large construction materials company dealing with the fit out and the fixtures of offices. What we're finding is they, as organizations, they want to close the loops themselves for a couple reasons. One is the resource that they're trying to close the loop on is now seen as valuable to them. They can either save money or make money somewhere in that chain. If they can save money, often the process to executing can be quite quick because you just need to get the operations behind it. And operations tend to be investment-led. It becomes a process. It's something you can train people around. It's there. It's on the sales side. Like, how do you close your loop? How do you tell people you're closing your loop and create messaging around that, create the communications? And that's actually been the struggle. So we've seen everything from recycled mannequins to recycled carpet to recycled clothing. We've not seen recycled food, thank God. But a lot of things that can be recycled are being recycled, new boxes. But then how do you tell that story? And I think this is actually one of the challenges that may also be interesting for you is, as an SME, you can do this. And as a large organization, you can do this. But there's the misconception right now that nobody's doing it because no one knows how to talk about it. Because think about it, if you start talking about you have more recycled as part of your brand campaign, it's going to change your brand image. And this is a struggle that we're seeing. Now, from a pure SME standpoint, not focusing on the collection side, but let's talk about developing a product, developing a brand around it. I do believe that in the short and long term, this is an amazing place for people to be. I have friends right now who are working on taking food scraps and turning that into fabric. I have friends who are looking at developing clothes, like basically recycling campaigns so they can then sell it into the manufactured economy, or they're developing their own products like mannequins, and then they're going to source the actual products from waste streams that they have seen, be it from the ocean or from an industrial zone down the street. What gets interesting is as they scale up, how do they scale up? And I think this is the challenge again for SMEs optically, is that you almost need the Unilevers, the Li and Fengs, the Nikes, whoever it may be, to be doing this for any sunlight to be shown on this issue. But if I were to look at those organizations, some of the most interesting things that they're deploying into their own systems are coming from entrepreneurs. If I look at Interface's Networks program, that was started by a small group of people, external partnership, small group of people. Nike just launched their Air Max campaign. They had partnered with a small group called MiniWiz out of Taiwan. And they're also doing really interesting things inside that's closed loop for Nike. And then obviously, for other, and I'm seeing this more and more and more. And basically, so it's not the big organizations that are doing it because the systems tend to be too big. It's the small organizations that see it, perfect it, and then sell it up or are bought up by the large organizations, which is another reason why I'm quite optimistic that this will over time become a very, I won't call it fashionable thing to do, it will become the right way to run your business. Because if large companies are able to value a small company whose entire mission is to do this to the point where they'll invest into them, then that means that they're starting to understand the value back to their entire system and why they should do it internally either way. So for me, closed loop economies is a great space to be in. China is a great place to be learning, piloting, scaling your systems. And being an SME is a great place to be because if you're a mission-driven entrepreneur, you can keep focused on this rather than get lost in the big organization trying to sell your idea. And then finally, if you're an SME who can sell your idea into the big companies, that just proves that your scalability of effort is just going to come through and that the economy will ultimately shift into saying, take, make, waste, and moving that into much more of a closed loop economy. So Dmitry, Dima, thank you very much for your question. I hope that answered. If it didn't, please follow up with a little bit more specifics about a certain product that you're interested in. Be more than happy to tailor it around that. So with that, thank you very much again. Remember, if you enjoyed it, if you made it this far, like, click, and share. Thank you very much. Have a great week.